Well, greetings and welcome back. I'm going to assume that you've already spent a little bit of time on our website, the ICSDP.org, and are maybe wanting to go a little deeper. And you've got some questions about who we are and what's at play here. And what exactly is an international intelligent and knowledge-based organization? I mean, that is a great question, and it's one that we're going to unpack here today. We've got a great group of people from all over the world who are digging in and doing a deep dive on what sustainability really means and what these things called the SDGs not only are, but what are the implications for us, on so many levels. And we have Thierry Zomahoun here with us today. He's the president and CEO of the ICSDP.org. And first off, Thierry, just thanks for joining us and being with us here to chat a little bit more about what's at play.
Thank you, David, for having me. Happy to be here.
So Thierry, this is a big project. I'm excited to be a part of it. I know there's so many other remarkable people, so much talent, so much energy and passion, and there's a real level of commitment to this thing called the ICSDP.org. That's the website. Check it out.
Sure.
Before we step into that, you've got a long history working in international development, and I want to talk a little bit more about that as well. But can you tell us a little bit about you and maybe a little bit about your why? Why do you care about issues like this? Maybe that's the question, Thierry.
Thank you, David. It's always hard for me to talk about myself. Exactly. But I'll say a couple of things. I grew up in West Africa, in Benin Republic. I was raised by my grandmother, and I've come close to experiencing in real life what poverty is. So when we say we are committed to zero poverty, for many, it's just a word, a simple couple of words on it in right, black and white, but for others it's their daily reality. So I've lived through that. I lived through the situation where you rise in the morning not knowing how to put food on the table, what to eat. So to me, my commitment, I see my life in the international development as a calling. I've been in this sector now for more than 3 decades, across fields in financial inclusion and education, from early childhood education to higher education to science and technology. And I've been fortunate to lead many international organizations, rising from the dust of my village to magnificent ballrooms in Toronto and Wyoming, and you name it.
And around
beyond all this, I still remain committed to my goal, which is not just to chant an SDG commitment of zero poverty, zero inequality, climate action, but to make it possible for the next generation, for them to have a better world.
Yeah, Thierry, that's really great to make it possible for the next generation. One of the things, as I was listening to you, and I want to learn more about you, and I'm sure our audience will too over time. How have you maintained, before we step into kind of what the SDGs are, how have you maintained that level of commitment and passion to this work? I mean, 30 years is a long time. You've been working academically with technology firms. You're a consultant. If you aren't formally, you are a professor as far as I'm concerned. You're a teacher. You're mentoring folks along the way. How do you get out of bed in the morning with a smile on your face?
What keeps me going, David, is to see that there are still many people, if not hundreds of millions of people out there living in poverty. There are still people around the world who cannot afford quality education. Others cannot put food on the table 3 times a day. There are still young girls out there who are denied their right to whatever forms of social amenity. And when I regardless of my disappointment, because there comes days when you're not happy about the day, how things went. But when you think about the souls that are still waiting there out there for things to change for them, it gives you courage and strength to rise and keep going. Because if we resign, if we don't rise up to the task, the next generation may not have the chance. So that's what keeps me going.
Well, it's good. It sounds a lot like hope to me, and I think
Exactly.
but what I love about this initiative and the ICSDP is that it's not just, it seems at least, and we're going to talk about this, but it's not just an academic exercise. Thierry, before we step into that, tell us a little bit about the SDGs. What exactly are they, and why do you see this as a pivotal moment?
David, this is first of all, we're living in a moment where people were maybe afraid to talk about the SDGs these days. Things have shifted since the beginning of this year, 2025. Is it that some do not want to run into trouble by voicing out what they think about the SDGs? But I think it is the moment for us to stay focused on these SDG things. But before even I get into any further discussion, I would just remind us of a couple of things. In 2015, the international community get together, they rally behind a bold and unprecedented vision, which is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is a project, very ambitious project of 17 goals and 169 targets. At a time when the different actors, groups of leaders were putting this together, it was referred to, the Agenda 2030 was referred to as universal and indivisible. It was some kind of new social contract of prosperity, justice, and planetary sustainability. But as we implement these goals, we've gone more than halfway to 2030. In 2023, by his own admission, the UN Secretary General said something that many bright minds and observers had already sensed. That is, the SDG, the 2030 agenda is faltering. Why is that? Why is that an ambitious project like the 2030 agenda is failing to achieve what the global community committed to achieving? Well, in my assessment, and in our assessment at the Commission, at the ICSDP, there are certain reasons, a number of reasons, but I will just limit to four reasons. And these four reasons are directly linked to the very architecture of the SDGs themselves. While well-intentioned, the SDGs are flawed in their structure. Number one, the SDGs emerged from a historical context of fragmented development efforts. You will recall, David, that back then, before 2015, various UN agencies were working in silos, across different spheres, economic, environmental, political, and you name it. So the SDG came into place, and they were meant to fix that problem, to break down the silos. Unfortunately, I don't think the silos have come down fully. So that's one flaw in the very architecture of the SDGs. The second flaw that I see, and that we've unpacked here at ICSDP, is the fact that the SDG target and indicators were shaped by a small group, an exclusionary group of people. The process was less participatory than what we would have expected back then. Some powerful actors were able to wield the influence on the process of design the targets and the indicators of the agenda. The third flaw in this SDG, in the agenda, in the very architecture of the agenda, is the pay-to-play dynamic. The pay-to-play dynamic has skewed the integrity of goal setting. In pursuit of funding, the UN has allowed many major and powerful financial contributors to wield influence, disproportionate influence over the language, the priorities, and the targets of the goals. That was a problem that is having some serious consequences these days. And lastly, as we can say, we could predict back then that if nothing changes, the SDGs and particularly the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goal was becoming and has become simply a reformist tool to humanize the status quo, and not to disrupt it. So, in a nutshell, these are the reasons why you wonder why the 2030 agenda is faltering and why it's failing to achieve its goal. So this is where ICSDP comes in. This is what we want. One of the key tasks of ICSDP is to tackle the issue related to the very architecture of the SDGs. So we're working on that, and we believe that with the new kind of mindset, because guess what? The SDGs aren't failing because we lack ambition. They are failing because we lack accountability, clarity, and courage.
Yeah, that's good, Thierry. It's really great. There's so many places we could go with this, and I think you've already answered another one of my questions, which is kind of buried within your commentary. And I think maybe for me right now, the best way to put it is the ICSDP is not interested in the status quo.
Yeah.
They're interested in disrupting. So I guess the question is, why now? So you've sort of answered that in a sense, critical juncture, it's not about fear, it's about courage. Things have changed and shifted globally. I hear all of that, and those are places we could go. But why an independent commission? And I think you've sort of alluded to why that's important, but I'd love to hear a couple more thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, why an independent commissioner is this critical juncture? Like I said earlier, the UN Secretary General has admitted, in 2023 by his own report, but many of us had already sensed that the SDGs are lagging behind, they're failing, they're faltering. But this has put the UN Sustainable Development Goal, the project, in a situation where it's become a struggling project, even for all its good intention, all its aspiration and goodwill. The Agenda 2023 agenda is losing momentum and credibility. So we want to rebuild credibility, to restore trust in sustainable development. Because guess what? If we do not restore trust in sustainable development, we risk losing not only a framework, but a future. Why ICSDP? Why an independent commission now? It is because the SDGs are noble in spirit. No one can deny that. We all applauded the SDGs. They are noble in spirit, but they are deeply flawed in structure. The problem is the problem of architecture, as I mentioned earlier. When you take, for instance, the commitment, zero poverty, climate action, inclusive growth, these principles are clashing with hard realities, rising inequality, intensified conflicts, and a planet in peril. So this is something that caused us to think and to say, it's time now that we ask questions ourselves. We ask ourselves a critical question. Are we tracking progress or merely tracing hope? This is where we believe that ICSDP has a role to play here.
Has a role to play, has a huge opportunity, really,
yes,
isn't it? It's
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that we're barely scratching the surface here, and we're trying to introduce people not only to the ICSDP but to people like yourself, and where this is all heading. I love what you said about how not only do we risk the framework, we're risking the future as well. I mean, that seems, Thierry, maybe that's the T-shirt for the ICSDP. Maybe we can have bumper stickers made up.
Sure.
So I mean, I think in some ways you've already answered this question, but again, I think this connects us back a little bit to your history and why you do the things you do. It seems to me that you really do believe in the splash and ripple effect. But why you? Why did you say yes to president and CEO of the ICSDP? Because not only are you taking on a leadership role, you're very much a part of where it's going to head, the creation of it, and so on.
I appreciate that. I take that as a compliment, David. So, I accepted to take on this responsibility with humility and grace. I'm humbled by the offer made to me. And the reason why I accepted lies in the core objectives of ICSDP. The Commission has set out the goal to tackle the flaws in the very architecture of the SDGs. So we are committed to unpacking the institutional and the political limitations or roadblocks that are hamstringing the real progress here. We want to redesign the SDG framework, the targets, and the indicators. And we want to be able to reconstruct metrics that are scientifically sound and which can help us to measure progress in real time. Those goals are extremely important because the commitment of the Commission, the overarching mission of the Commission is not to become a critique of the UN system. That's not our goal. We are not an activist organization. That is something that I'm very interested in. But we do see ourselves not only as an independent, not partisan commission, but as an international project that is designed to rebuild trust. ICSDP is a trust-building project. It's not a critique of the UN, but it is a critical companion of the UN system. We are not an academic, this trust-building project is not an academic exercise, but it is an actionable agenda. The other thing that I like about it is that we are not a new bureaucracy, but we are a mobilizing force, David, for course correction. Remember one thing, every generation reaches a turning point when it must decide whether to course correct or collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. And our generation, and that generation is ours. So my keen interest in joining forces with other colleagues, the scientists, the thinkers in this working for this commission, lies in the very essence of trying not to reinvent the wheel, but to correct it.
Yeah, it's so good, Thierry. I love. I mean, you're coming up with a lot of marketing campaigns here, I think, and other T-shirts. I think we're going to have quite a store up on the
I wish
ICSDP at some
I
point.
were
Yeah, maybe
a
we're going to
big
raise
marketing.
funds. Yeah, raise funds selling T-shirts. Thierry, I mean, I think you really did answer sort of my final question here for us today, and I'm looking forward to these conversations. And those of you listening, do stay tuned. We've got a podcast coming. We've got other videos. We have panel discussions that you're going to be seeing soon live up on the site. The site is the icsdp.org. Check it out and please sign up for our newsletter there. You know, you already mentioned that this is not, Thierry, an academic exercise. This is truly, let's go a little cliche. This is truly about rubber meeting road and that gap in between. And when you really tease out that metaphor, there is no gap. So can you unpack that a little bit more? Because I think what I love about, for me, the thread here has been hope. It really has. We kind of started in hope.
Yeah.
I love that you've already told us very clearly this is not just a critique.
No.
We're not here just to, unpack all that's wrong with what's currently going on. No,
counterproductive. Yeah.
Counterproductive. No,
Yeah.
the goal here is actually to make contact with reality.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear that not only maybe as an affirmation, but maybe as a challenge to our listeners as well.
You know, we want to speak to the infrastructure, the superstructure of the SDGs. We want to speak to thinkers, diplomats, and head of state. But we also want the work of the commission to reach ordinary people, ordinary lives in remote places where people are still struggling to afford basic needs. So our objectives here is to ensure that we get to a point where, first of all, David, it will take an honest, bold, and independent reckoning with the past for us to be able to chart a new course forward for the SDGs. We must not hide this. So this is fundamental to addressing the root causes of why the 2030 agenda for sustainable development goal is faltering, number one. Number two, we want to be able to redesign the sustainable development goals at the commission. It's very important that we do this exercise based on research and rigorous science-based evidence. This is crucially important. When you take, for instance, some of the metrics of the SDGs, they are seductive but superficial. So we want to correct that things. And these things that I'm talking about have direct impact on millions, if not billions, lives around the globe. So we want to be able to reset the priorities. Want to be able to reset the global priorities. Make sure that the SDGs do not become a failed experiment. We cannot afford to let the SDGs become a failed experiment, given all the resources that have been invested in that ambitious project. We still believe that we can make the SDGs work for the nations, for our communities around the globe, and even work for the corporate and the private philanthropic foundations. So the other things that we want to be able to put in place at the commission is to make sure that we have measurable metrics. We develop a measurable metrics where we can track real progress and correct things as the implementation evolves. So these are things, practical things we want to be doing, which will reach ordinary lives in a way that it transforms and changes their daily existence. This is why we are saying we are not an intellectual. Yes, we are a knowledge-based organization that leverages research excellence to drive for results and accountability. But we're not an elite commission. We are independent, and we emphasize that independence because we want to be free from any vested interest to work for the success of the SDGs, of the agenda, to course correct things, and to work for bringing about change in the life of ordinary people.
Yeah, it's so good, Thierry, and what a great introduction and I think challenge to all of us. Really, I mean, I think what you've been talking about, if I could kind of reduce it here, is leverage. This is about leveraging top down, bottom up. This is about leveraging academic value and intuition with practical, sleeves rolled up application, people on the ground, and this is where you've come from. And I think this, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you, and I'm sure our audience and our listeners will be too. So, thanks for taking a few minutes out here today just to unpack a little bit about the ICSDP and where we're heading. And for those of you listening, please head to the website, sign up for the newsletter, and stay tuned. Thierry, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to get back with you together and for another podcast.
Looking forward to it.